recording.
And we are live.
I am recording.
You're listening to the Verhoeven Effect podcast. I'm Conlon.
And I'm Nathan.
And today we have another very special episode. We have The Empty Man from 2020. So pretty recent movie, but a
Probably
COVID
one of the
movie.
most recent movies we've done on this.
Yeah, I think it's the latest one, yeah. Yeah, because generally we do stuff that's older, but also has like a lot of like, is this an adaptation? Does this have like several other tries at being made and stuff like this? But this is also an adaptation, so it still fits that thing.
Yeah.
Originally October 23rd, 2020, which I don't really know how, because like nothing was like, it was released in theaters, but it had to have been very limited theaters.
Yeah.
But mostly it's got known on streaming services. Directed by David Pryor, who, as far as I can tell, just from an Intermovie Database, like other credits, he seems to be like a videographer for like special like features on DVDs. Like he'd do like behind the scenes stuff and cut that together.
Oh, okay.
And it would go on a DVD. Like that was his main job. So this is kind of his first, like he has some short films to his credit, but this is kind of his first movie. And it doesn't seem like he's got some stuff later on. He's like doing like a TV episode of Guillermo del Toro's like new thing called like the Cabinet of Curiosities or something like that. So he's directing an episode of that, which is probably going to be some horror movie thing. This is written by David Pryor and it was based on a graphic novel by Colin Bunn from Boom Studios.
Nope.
That's the comic, because they have their, it starts off with they have their own, kind of like version of the Marvel opening sequence, but it's Boom Studios.
Yeah, I noticed that. I was like, oh, okay. Interesting.
So I'm not sure I don't know what they typically make, and I don't know if anything else they've done has made it, but this seemed to be kind of, I think this is like their first foray into making movies, because there was like a Boom Studios production was written on it. Also, this was originally picked up by Fox Studios and ended up landing there, but is like after the merger. And this was also originally shot and finished in 2017. And then had a lot of poor screenings, and then they just at some point dumped it out onto streaming and during the pandemic. So,
yeah.
But it seemed like a lot of the cuts that the audience didn't like was either unfinished rough cuts or a studio cut that just basically tried to make it like 70 minutes long. So I think this cut seems to be like more what he wanted to do.
Yeah.
But it still seemed like critics didn't like it too much. And I'm not sure, like, I didn't look up the criticism of, so I'm not even sure what necessarily what the criticisms that other than just like maybe it being unclear or something. But it is.
Yeah, it's not. It has its strengths and weaknesses for sure.
Yeah.
But if you watch it like 4 or 5 times, it's like, oh yeah, this is kind of cool. If you have, an open mind. I know a lot of people like, they thought it was the excessively long and seemingly unrelated opening sequence, which went on for like 25 minutes. Was the people in the Himalayas, and it's like, yeah, that's kind of weird the first time you watch it, and then it jumps into the main story. But then you watch it a few times, you're like, oh, that's actually pretty cool. For me, it establishes
Well, that's the weird thing is like sometimes the opening sequence is like what gets praised about the movie, and apparently they didn't like the other 2/3. But I'm like,
oh, okay.
Again, I haven't like looked up in depth into the reception of the movie, so I just kind of watched it. Stars James Badge Dale, who probably most famous for his role in what was the Marines like version of Band of Brothers? Is that just the Pacific? Yeah. where he played. It was like Private Lucky or something like, or is it Lucky? I can't. I think it's Lucky. A real guy. I read his book called Helmet for My Pillow.
Oh, okay.
I've read all the books from those guys, from that, the real guys from that's based on. Because one
Oh,
guy, there's like 3 books out there. There's Helmet for My Pillow, and then there's the one guy, his name's like Sledgehammer. There's a book from him, and then there's like a corporal who was like in charge of him. He also has the same book, but his book's kind of interesting because he's like, because like Sledgehammer dude, like he just had like, oh, this sucks absolutely completely, and it's like, here's like how it affected me and all that stuff. And then the other guy who's basically in the same unit, but because how stuff was going on, he basically got promoted and had more, and he was more like a behind the lines guy trying to train people like to the front lines, and didn't really see a whole as much frontline action as everybody else. So he got out of the war with like pretty good. It's like, hey, that wasn't so bad.
yeah. Depends on what place and time you were in, whether it sucked or not. Yeah.
Well, also like the Sledgehammer dude was like, he was like with infantry units because he had like that mortar that you set up, where it's like a man mortar that you can move like by people by just moving it around. And he was doing a lot of like artillery stuff. So it's like, and I remember there's a thing from that one book On Killing where it talks about how like a lot of artillery guys, they didn't have like the PTSD that the frontline guys had, because all their killing, which in most wars, all the killing's done by artillery mostly.
Yeah.
And you never see the person you kill. You just kind of come upon their bodies, and there's this very distinct disconnect between the people you killed and not having to see them die. So, and so they're spared from a lot of PTSD.
Yeah.
Then the other main things are, you have Marin Ireland. I don't really know her, and you have Sasha Frolova, and I don't really know her. So it's kind of a lot of unknown to me people, and I don't know if they're like, like, I don't think they're a bunch of like, I think they're all Americans. I don't think they're like a bunch of British actors putting on English or American accents or anything like that. So,
well, Stephen Root's been in a lot of things.
Oh yeah, he's like, yeah. See, I usually put the 3 top build people because that's how it pops up in Internet Movie Database. And so yeah, Stephen Root's probably actually the most known person in this movie.
And then the one of the guys, oh, I forget what his name is. The actor, the guy who plays like, hey, I can show you how to get into this
It's
cult
Garrett.
or whatever.
Garrett is his character's name.
Okay,
Garrett.
Garrett.
He's in the new
he's
Lord Rings of Power movie or TV show.
Yeah, he's Elrond in Rings of Power, which was weird to like watch this again. It's like, oh yeah, that's that Elrond guy. Yeah, he's English.
Oh, okay.
Robert Arameo.
Sounds like a condiment.
Yeah.
I'll put cucumbers, tomatoes, some mayo on there.
Perfect. Mix it with a little wine.
We start off Act 1. Yeah, we have the Boom Studios logo because this is based on a comic. Then we cut to we have title says Ura Valley, Bhutan. I think that's how you say it. 1995. Huh?
Yeah, that's how you say it.
Okay. It's like between India and China. It's
Yeah.
like Nepal and Bangladesh are around there too. So, then we got people hiking toward a mountain. And then we have some ominous like throat singing going on. I was like, does that exist in the universe, or is that just the mysterious soundtrack? And it's, well, yeah, you don't really know, but
yeah, I think if I was walking around, I started hearing that. I'm like, yeah, I'm going back to a city. Whatever's about to happen here, that music probably doesn't prelude like good stuff. It's very effective though.
Yeah.
Because it was kind of, I don't know where they shot it at, but it was really alien looking landscape.
Yeah.
But yeah.
It's also like it's kind of interesting, like because the people are all dressed up, like they're kind of like they seem to be like rich people, like on like I'm gonna go find myself in in the mountains of Bhutan, and then so they got all their gear and everything, and they look kind of rich, and then there's just a truck full of monks being driven up the mountain.
An army truck too. Yeah. It's like, are these guys prisoners, or are they just army helping them, or what?
Yeah.
And no one's smiling. Everyone looks kind of like angry.
Yeah, so they keep hiking into like, and then they come across like kind of like I don't know, like a monastery. I think there's like that thing where it has like the spinning like bells and like wood thing, which I don't know what that is, but you
Some
see
kind
it.
of prayer thing. I think.
Yeah,
I've seen them before.
Yeah.
In the Golden Child, because remember he has to spin that to talk to the guy. Because he like tries to do a rap thing with it, like where is the child? So that's like all my references to the culture and religion of that part of the world come from the Golden Child. So,
man,
really
should we do the
well-rounded guy?
That's the second time that's come up. Should we do the Golden Child? I don't remember being good, but it's very memorable despite that.
Yeah, it's just kind of it's good and silly. But there's a lot of Eddie Murphy does a great job at it. But yeah, we should talk about that at some point. Oh, I'm sorry. This was mostly filmed in South Africa.
Okay, because I did hear that they got like a South African like credit to film there, but like there's nothing in there that I'd never where I'd be like, oh yeah, this is South Africa.
See the guy running around from District 9. It's like, oh, South Africa. Or Dread. There's like buildings in a dark city. Yep, South Africa.
And then we got they cross a rickety chain bridge, and it's got like flags and bells on it. It's a very cool looking ominous bridge.
Yeah, it doesn't look like a lot of OSHA work went into drawing that up.
And then we get titles that flash on screen. Day 1. So they stay on top of the mountain, but they fear that there's a storm coming in. And then one of them hears a weird chime or like harmonic, and then like stands at like the edge of the mountain. Or it's not really, well, it kind of looks like the edge. No one else hears it, and then this dude like walks forward, and then he falls into a dark crevice.
Yeah, he like just disappears.
Yeah,
it's actually a cool scene. It's like, did something grab that guy? Where did he go?
And then the rest of the crew like kind of get a bunch of get a bunch of rigging stuff together, and they rappel down the chasm. The chasm's dark, and there's like a bunch of like grasshoppers and bugs. It's basically like the floor and walls are moving with bugs.
Yeah.
Very kind of like Indiana Jones almost. Actually, this whole scene is kind of like more reminiscent of like Alien.
Yeah, I was gonna say, yeah. This reminded me more of like the egg chamber type weirdness.
I think it's. Oh wait, I got his name wrong. I think it's Greg. Okay. Because I swear somebody called him Rick, and I started writing Rick, and then later on it's like, oh, his name's Greg. So, Greg sees Paul, who's just like sitting down cross-legged and staring at this weird skeleton that's got too many,
like H.R. Giger type skeleton.
Yeah, there's too many bones. It's like it's like, okay, the skull looks human, but like, and there's like a rib cage, but everything's arranged kind of weird, and then there's just like extra stuff that's like, is that like wings or what is that?
Yeah, and his hands look like this, like they have 20 fingers. It's just,
yeah,
and they're huge. And this thing looks like it like sat there and was blasted with a flamethrower, like the way it spreads out on the wall. It's really cool. I mean, it's a great scene.
Yeah,
it's like if you saw something like that, you'd be like, yeah, time to go. I'm not even messing around with it. Whatever this is, I'm climbing back up that rope, or in my case, they'd have to like haul me up with a come along. But either way.
And I thought, well, there's something that kind of looked like an egg sack or something in its lap, but that's where I definitely got like, oh, is this just going to be directly an alien like thing?
Yeah.
Just more, but nothing happens with the weird egg or whatever. And the guy goes up to Paul, and Paul whispers back at him, "If you touch me, you'll die." And so so Greg is like contemplating, he's like not touching him, but then eventually is like, well, we got to get you out of here. So he touches him. And then when he does, Paul like starts convulsing. And then Greg drags him out of the chasm, and then he starts carrying him around. But Greg needs to rest from carrying Paul, which I didn't know if that was something like, is he just getting tired, or is like now his Paul or is Greg cursed as well or something? But it's kind of neither. He just gets tired, and plus there's a storm coming in. One of the ladies spots a house and they go to it. It's like a shack with like a wood burning stove in it. Although I always thought it was weird because there's like these windows in it that I thought were just like openings in the shack, but it's like, oh, those are windows.
Yeah.
I was like, man, wouldn't that be cold as fuck in there? It's like,
no,
those
like
are
a
windows.
good idea. Just don't do the holes in the wall. Just no window.
Yeah, then the storm rolls in. Greg is unresponsive, but he's like still breathing and he has his eyes open. Which is creepy and weird. They're like undressing him to like kind of look for like bug bites or something like that. It's like, something's got to be the problem here. And there's signs of like either like cutting or suicide attempts. You don't really know. But there's like a mention where it's like, is he okay? Has he been doing fine? He's like, yeah, he's been okay. Then they cut to nighttime. We have Ruthie, one of the girls. She's like messing with like this bone whistle or something. Did he have that the whole time, or did he acquire it down in that cavern?
I thought it was something in the house, but
okay. Yeah, I guess that makes sense.
I could be wrong.
Yeah, because there's a whole thing with like finding a bottle and blowing on it, but so that could be. Here's this found object that curses you. She when she blows out, she like falls asleep and then like wakes up and she hears like footsteps at the door. But then when she goes to open the door, there's like everyone's behind the doors asleep, and so it's like, it's scary. Titles, day 2. We have Greg and Fiona leave to go get help. Ruthie sees a figure out in the snow and she goes to ask for help, but things get quiet as she senses danger. The figure chases after her. She closes the door and then there's like pounding. But eventually it becomes like Greg and Fiona are at the door pounding, and then Ruthie's freaking out, understandably. It's like, no, I just saw death or something.
Yeah, and I understand this is like a blowing gale blizzard. Like you can't see like 10 feet in front of you, but you just see this spooky shape that just starts moving very quickly towards you. And it's someone like in reference would be like 9 feet tall or something. Like it's like, that's definitely weird. And the fact that the pounding on the door starts immediately is there's a lot of good scares in this movie like this.
Then we see Ruthie sleeping and you hear like this weird ticking sound, which they pull back and another kind of jump scare, which reveals like Paul just whispering into her ear. It's like
really cool scene.
Yeah, because like how simple that is and how fearful that is. Like nothing, there's no monsters.
Yeah.
It's all sound design and juxtaposition and composition.
Stacey, I'm good because I watch this with my wife because she kind of likes this sort of stuff. I said, yeah, you're gonna wake up one night and I'm gonna be doing that.
But then she wakes up, but Paul isn't. Yeah, they make that whispering like extra creepy because they do this thing where it's like, it's not just whispering, but it's like this inaudible whispering where it's like just the ticks of like the vowels and stuff or whatever, or the I forget what you call that.
The plosive sound.
Yeah.
They're just highlighting those and like gating out the rest of it.
Yeah. So
it just sounds like someone's like. Of course, I got a filter on. It's probably not, but yeah.
But it's very effective.
But you're not expecting that to be that. And then you see it and you're like, oh, okay. Just weird and frightening.
Well, yeah, they've already introduced mysticism, so that like what are they whispering? What does it mean? Is this a magical incantation? Like, what is it? So it's very good at like just like giving you enough runway to like run away with your imagination. Like, what is this?
Yeah.
And she wakes up, but Paul isn't there. They look around and then they open the door and they see that there's footprints that leaving the cabin. So we have titles. Day 3, they find Paul sitting at the bridge blowing on the bone whistle thing.
Yep.
I think it's a bone whistle, or is it just a whistle?
I mean, it's more effective to say it's a bone whistle. It's definitely cool to have like a pan flute made out of femurs, and it would kind of fit the vibe of this movie. I don't know if
Yeah.
that's the case, but that's like I'll go with it.
Because that's what I thought was the first. Is like I thought it looked like some kind of hollowed out femur, which
Yeah,
would seem kind of gross and weird and extra and fitting. So, yeah, we just saw a weird skeleton thing. So yeah, throw more bones in it.
yep.
Greg gets mad at Paul. It's like, come on, just snap out of us. This is always he's
Tired of your
always
self-indulgent bullshit, Paul.
and then Paul's just whispering, "I told you." And then Ruthie stabs and throws Fiona and Greg off the mountain.
This was really cool scene too, because it looks like they're falling like for eternity.
Yeah. And then Ruthie just turns around backwards and falls off the mountain.
So she looks at Paul one last time. So now we know what instructions he was whispering into her ear.
And then Paul blows the whistle and things go out of focus. Then we get titles, The Empty Man, but the P is gone. Which is like, does that mean anything? Or is it just trying to be clever? Yeah, I have that being the end of Act 1. Which like, I guess you could say that's more of a what would that be?
Cold opening?
Yeah, cold open, pre-credit sequence, stuff like that. Or pre-title sequence. But
yeah, because it's not really clearly related to the rest of the movie until the very end.
No, but it lays out once you have like, because what this opening does well is it sets out like the rules of how things unfold, and so you got a day 1, day 2, day 3, and then we start over again with a day 1. And you're like, oh, this is gonna happen again.
Yeah.
But yeah, we don't really necessarily get a plot. We don't know what or why, or if anything is going on. If people are just hallucinating, is it evil or what is it?
Yeah, because there's nothing clearly supernatural happening here other than people acting weird all of a sudden.
Yeah.
Like there's no magic being revealed or physically impossible things going on. It's like, oh, he just cut 2 people's throats and threw them off a cliff and then followed suit.
Well, even if she sees a weird figure, there's kind of like, they have like effects on the screen where it's like you can interpret that as being like a hallucination.
Yeah.
So like almost everything where it's like something supernatural happens, you can excuse it away as being altered perception by the character. So yeah, Act 2, it's Webster Mills, Missouri, 2018.
Yep.
So whatever they did, they must have done a fantastic job to substitute Missouri or South Africa for Missouri.
Well, I think this part of it was filmed in like Illinois or something.
Oh, okay. You think they just filmed the mountain stuff in?
Yeah, and I think the bridge scene may have been filmed in South Africa.
Okay.
But I'm not sure because it kind of jumps around. But yeah, I think like the opening sequence was probably because that doesn't look like anywhere in the United States unless like you can make the mountains of West Virginia maybe look like that, but even then the trees would be wrong and stuff. So yeah.
So we have James the Sombra, played by James Badgedale. So that works either way. We're gonna call him James from now on.
Yeah.
He's jogging on like a weird footbridge, and he stops to smoke.
Yep. It shows that he's got a complicated person.
Yeah.
Gonna be in shape and smoke. Kind of an 80s thing. It's kind of a throwback, retro.
Yeah, a lot of like smoking on like bench presses in the 80s.
Yep.
And then he's like constantly hearing whispers of "Where were you?" And then we cut to La Sombra Security. So he's like a locksmith and he sells like pepper spray and like cameras and stuff like that. Then we cut to him like drinking. He's drinking alone at a restaurant. He uses a birthday coupon and the staff comes out and sings happy birthday to him, and he gets like he gets like a frown with a candle in it. He's also embarrassed about all this.
Yeah, he doesn't seem happy at all. And this birthday certificate he turns in looks like it's been put through the washing machine.
Yeah.
He's like, yeah, check the date on that. You know?
Then we cut to his home, and then like some kids like waiting outside for him, and then she talks about like not dealing with death well. Her name's Amanda, and she, it's pretty like, oh, you joined some cult, and then they apparently think nothing is real.
Yeah. Which that's like answers a lot of questions. Like, oh, okay, good. This is what I've been waiting for. Yeah, it doesn't matter. It's not real. Cool. I needed someone to tell me about that.
She gets a call from her mom, but she doesn't answer it, but she leaves anyways. And then we have James has nightmares, more nightmares and more whispering of where were you. Then we cut the titles, day one. So as we know, something's going on. This is the start of the process or whatever. We're at Nora Quayle's house. She's calling after Amanda, and she walks in Amanda's room and gasps, but we don't see what she gasps at. And then James shows up. Nora can't get any words out because she's just too like afraid. And they show like Amanda's closet's like stripped of the clothes, so it's like, okay, she left. But then we see written in blood on the mirror is the empty man made me do it. Then we cut to like the next scene where like the detectives show up to like go over everything. This is where we learn that James used to be a cop. We have Detective Villers here, played by Ron Canada, who he's in like almost hundreds of things, like 152 things. He's usually like a calm presence, but like you've definitely seen him in something.
Oh yeah, if you've watched TV or movies in the last 100 years, this guy's been in something.
Yeah. And the other detectives like show him something, and they ask about pets because I think the thing is like there's blood on the mirror, but they don't know if they don't think it's human blood. So, but Nora says they don't have any, and then the detectives want to talk to James outside, but then they come to like cut to James coming back where he's gonna basically tell her like what the cops told him, but he like because the cops basically aren't going to investigate because they think that she just ran away from home. But also like that's the thing, like, she's a troubled teen, and then she's like, well, not too much, she's just a normal teen. It's like a normal teen with like dark thoughts and like suicidal contemplation. It's like, know, normal teen stuff.
Yeah.
Which actually is, yes. That is normal teen stuff. But he like has like a man has like a diary or an art book or something that has a bunch of weird stuff in it. Inside that he finds the Pontifex Institute. Pontifex is a weird word. Does that have any other correlation to anything, or is that just a fun word they came up with?
Well, I know Pontifex is like the Latin name for like the Pope.
Oh, okay.
That's with an A. So this is with an E. So I don't know. Outside, because that's what I thought immediately is like, oh, is this like oh, does it mean something else?
Yeah.
Because I know like in like it was it is it Pontifex the A is like Pontifex Rex is like the ultimate bridge to God or something. But I don't know. Pontifex. Oh yeah, it shows that. Oh, yeah, they do use that, too. Okay. The Vatican Church also uses that. So, okay, yeah. Well, now that, good research, Nathan. So, yeah. It was,
well, they could just, if you said Pontifex Rex is the whole thing meaning a bridge to God, and they just slammed it together, that would definitely, like, be on the nose for this movie.
Well, yeah, it makes sense.
Then James goes to high school to interview one of Amanda's friends. He gives her a cigarette. We see like a dark figure like pop out like in the girl's like view, Devara, but then it just disappears. So obviously nobody else saw that but her.
Yeah.
And then James asks about the empty man. And then she tells her like it's like a bridge, a bottle, and then something happens. Then we have a flashback to a bridge where Amanda and Devar are hanging out and thinking existential thoughts about what everything means. Then Amanda talks and jokes about suicide, or doesn't. Who knows? Yeah.
Yeah.
And then she finds a bottle, and then like the whole like it's kind of this like Bloody Mary type of thing where like, if you do this, something will happen. So they say if you find a bottle on a bridge and you blow on it, then the empty man will come for you.
Yeah. That's all you have to do is look across the bridge, think about them, and blow into a bottle. But when they blow into the bottle, it makes the same tone as like the bone flute.
Yeah.
From earlier. So it makes something simple and stupid like seem ominous all of a sudden. Like, wait, that sounds exactly the same as.
Which also I get to know if like, because technically in the opening sequence, like the day one doesn't start with somebody blowing in the flute, except for Ruthie does that. And the thing I was thinking about is like, that chasm they find, well, if there's wind blowing over the top of it, then like the whole mountain is like a flute or something. So
Right.
But like also nobody else heard that sound, but there's a whole thing special with Paul. So I don't know if that has anything to do with it or not, but yeah, it's fun stuff where it's like, okay, that could work there. Yeah. So yeah, they all blow in the bottle. And they say first night you hear him, second night you see him, third night he comes and finds you, and nobody says like, well, what happens when he finds you? It's like, ah.
Consequences be damned.
Yeah, nobody insinuates something good will happen.
Yeah, it's not like he'll find you and bring you a bowl of Lucky Charms. Tell you like secrets about life.
And then you're like, where's the milk? And he's like, no milk. And, no.
Dry cereal. A new horror.
From Guillermo del Toro.
Just people eating like Cheerios dry. It's like it looks like tears dripping in the bowl, and then when the camera pans away, it's blood. That's the credits. Cry cereal coming to theaters near you. What? What did we just watch?
It's like eating sand in your soul.
In the ancient times, cereal was a sacrifices made to the gods. And they're doing it again, the ritual every day. Dry cereal.
See, a lot of cereal is made from corn, and corn used to be maize. It's what it's derived from. And that makes it amazing.
Dry cereal. Ideas.
It was the last thing we could copyright. Yeah, so Amanda like sits down like in a cross-legged pose, then she blows on the bottle and just keeps whispering the empty man over and over again. Which I guess everybody finds weird, but is okay with it. So yeah, she's eccentric.
Yeah, she's a little quirky.
And then they stare down like the kind of like the darkness of the bridge. Because even though there's like lights on the bridge, but it's like if you look far enough down the bridge, it's just complete darkness with kind of like a streak of light down the middle. And they like hear like whistling and footsteps running towards them, but they don't see anything, but they run from it.
Yeah.
Then we cut back to present, and then Devarro seems paranoid. Then she sees a line of kids that are like sitting and look over her at the same time, like their heads all move at the same time to look at her.
Yeah, there's a lot of scenes like that in the movie of just like distant weirdness going on.
Yeah.
It's kind of another trademark of this movie of like, God, just weird people acting weird in groups.
James goes to see Brandon, which is one of the friends, but Brandon isn't home. Or yeah, but like you can hear like someone crying in the background of the home, but
yeah,
that's never revealed what's going on. Then James goes to Lisa's house. The home seems empty. There's something on the TV. It's like an old show, but there's like one of the lines I picked out. It says like his God is coming. James finds another Pontifex flyer, and then there's a dead dog in the backyard. So that's what the dog probably used to write the blood on the mirror.
Okay.
And probably other things, because there's like 4 buckets of blood in front of the dog. So it's like, but
that's
you only
a real weird scene, because when I first saw it, I was like, are they field dressing a deer back there? And then you see it's a dog. It's like, oh, okay, that's
weird. But then it ends up James can't find any of Amanda's friends that were on the bridge that night. So James goes over to the bridge. He finds a bottle and he blows on it. And then he just throws the bottle in the river. There's like a bit of wind, and then the bugs stop chirping. So, that's weird.
Yeah.
Then he hears like clanging down below the bridge, because there's like a manhole on the bridge that the kids opened up in the previous scene. So he goes down in it. And then he finds like 5 of the kids dead, just hanging under the bridge. And
yeah, it's a really weird scene. It's like, oh, this is nightmare fuel.
Yeah, because there's like, because there's nothing below them. They're hanging from like a pipe under the bridge with nothing below them. And it's like, well, how did this happen? Did some ethereal force lift them up there and hang them there? Like putting hangers on in a closet? Or did they like hand over hand crawl over there and like pull out the noose and then drop themselves? And it doesn't matter, because it's all creepy. And then there's of course written on the wall somewhere, it says the empty man made me do it. So.
Yeah, it's just like dead teenager wind chimes.
Yeah.
Underneath this bridge, which is like, what's weird about the bridge is like, if you've ever been underneath a bridge like that, like you got to watch where you're putting your feet, because it's not like a built structure. It's just like supporting the actual bridge. And like to turn around and see something like that, oh, you just fall right in the water, because you're just so freaked out. Because you're walking around in this like skeletal substructure.
Well, because it's during the day, but going under the bridge, it's like covered by the bridge, so it's dark down there. So
yeah,
presumably he doesn't like completely freak out because he was a cop and maybe he's seen some stuff before. So
yeah, unlike me, who would just fall into the water. It's like, this is nightmare fuel, and plus, it's not a safe place to walk around.
And then we cut to night, and the bridge is just like full of police and first responders, and then James gets a nosebleed. And then we cut to Devara's like alone at a spa, and she goes into the steam room, and then we see a dark figure like grabs her and is like stabbing her in the face with scissors. And then there's a cut to like a different angle where she's just like pinning herself against the wall and then stabbing herself in the face.
Right.
And then the figure like closes her eyes as she's like dead on the floor, and then we hear some more of that click whispering again. So now she's dead. But yeah, we're also like, it's like, okay, well then what's reality? So it's giving us questions there. It's like, is this just a mass hallucination, or is there a being out there? And then James talking to Detective Villers again. This is where James finds out that Devara got killed. And then Villers is like talking about like just like kind of a bunch of like weird stuff happening, where he's like, yeah, usually like, there's 2 murders a year or 3 if this town gets frisky. And they said, I was like, no, there's stuff creeping up. It's like becoming an epidemic of just like weird killings. And
well, James also, like they said that they said, it's like, oh, Devara, it's suicide. She stabbed herself in the face with scissors and killed herself. And he's like, nobody kills themselves like that. It's not possible to do that. And yeah, that's when we get this whole thing about, a mother fed her baby to a pack of dogs.
Yeah.
It's getting worse and worse. And so that's like kind of going a nod to the story in the comic books, where this is like actually an epidemic.
Yeah.
More than an isolated thing in the movie.
Well,
I understand why it went this way, but
yeah, well, it's way cheaper.
Yeah.
And probably it's more understandable as like a horror movie. Is like, here's an entity. If you access these things and people start dying, so people are familiar with that kind of like formula where it seems like the comic book was a bit more wide reaching, where it's like
Yeah.
there's government organizations, like this virus is all over the world, but they don't know how to stop it or even how it starts, and it just becomes a weird thing. But yeah, also like when the lady fed her baby to the dogs, the empty man made me do what was written at the scene. So it's like, okay, this is all connected. James is like listening to his Devar interview again because when she got in the car, he recorded her on his phone, and then he Googles out the Pontifex Institute, and then it kind of like redirects him to the Pontifex Society. There's some buzzwords of a doomsday cult. We got Tulpa in there, which is like an imaginary creature brought to life through thought. It's like has something to do with like Buddhism. It's like a part of that.
We also learned about tulpas in the follow up to Twin Peaks.
Yeah. There's also an equation of thought plus concentration plus time equals flesh.
Yeah. I thought I was gonna go Cronenberg on me like.
Also seems like something that what the Hellraiser guy would do.
Oh.
Clive Barker.
Yeah.
Nora comes to the house of food, and she's trying to be helpful with James because he's been having a weird time finding a bunch of dead kids, and but really she's just trying to keep herself together because her daughter's still out there, and like she's like, well, all her friends are dead, so she's got to be dead, right? And then she asks to stay over, but James doesn't really answer her, but offers a drink instead. We get more nightmares and whispers for James when he's sleeping. You get the empty man kind of flashes for a moment, or like the dark figure flashes for a moment when in his dreams, and then he wakes up and he hears Steph and footsteps. He sees shadows under the door, but then when he opens the door, there's nothing there, but the front door is left open. So that's day one. He heard him, but he didn't see him. So we have titles. Day 2. James goes to the Pontifex building. He films out like a weird form from the creepy receptionist. The forums have a bunch of weird questions and ideas in it. I don't think I wrote any of them down, but there are a bunch of weird stuff where it alludes to like destroying the world by combining your thoughts and stuff like that.
Yeah. It's really weird, off-putting stuff.
Yeah. And everybody in there except for him is just like, oh yeah, this makes sense.
That sounds good.
James tries to be
this is the part of the movie I like the most.
Yeah.
Because this is like gibberish. And it's like almost like the people in the cult, like, oh, it's gibberish. I mean, it's there is something going on. There are big ideas going on in the background about good and evil and summoning forces and all this stuff, but it's like it's all presented as gibberish to the audience because essentially it is. I mean, that's all that stuff is. All those mystery type religions and stuff. It's all just like, oh, this is just a bunch of nonsense.
Yeah, there's no proof. It's all what do you call that? Not psychology. What's the philosophical?
Metaphysics and stuff. Yeah.
I was gonna say more philosophical because it's like it just feels like this. It feels like what's going on when you don't have to prove anything. Like this is what it feels like. It's like it's kind of a bunch of nonsense, but speaking towards something. Trying to say something about humanity without any data whatsoever. James is like trying to be straightforward, but like he doesn't get any direct answers. And this is also where James like has a constant refrain from here on out where he says like, hey, I know about weird stuff. I grew up in San Francisco.
Yeah, I do like that too. It's like, yeah, this Missouri weirdness doesn't hold a candle to West Coast weirdness. Trust me, you guys, it's nothing new here.
Then we have Arthur Parsons, played by Stephen Root. He's giving a speech to like a bunch of seemingly traumatized and susceptible people because that's how
Yeah.
cults are built.
A lot of people in hoodies looking like they're just, coming down off the last trip or something. Yeah. It looks really cool. I mean, it looks like every like urban wasteland, inner city type wasteland you've ever seen.
But it also has like that energy from like Fight Club when they're in like the anonymous meetings and stuff like that.
Yeah. Yeah, it's because of groups like this. This is why I don't leave the house and get out much. I feel like this is all that's waiting for me.
One of the lines I picked out, it says, "The empty man beckons you to discover the true face of the world." Then James talks to Arthur. Some other lines I picked out, he says, "The empty man's a focal point for the target manifestation of hidden energies," which again is nonsense, but like to somebody that'll mean everything.
Yeah, it's like gibberish, but it's like, oh no, because what's cool about this movie, what I like is how it does follow through on this nonsense with like, oh yeah, this is what we're really doing. But it's actual evil.
Yeah. But it's poetic nonsense, so it's fun.
Yeah.
He talks about the noosphere, the sum of all conscious thought. Yeah, Arthur says
it sounds like a lot of the political philosophies today of there's a lot of this like new age. This would be new age gibberish in another time. It's like, oh yeah, there's people that like, oh yeah, you should believe this. Everything is, there are no, biological constructs that make you one thing or another. Everything is fluidic, including like human thought and existence and all this. Like, yeah, this is crazy. If you like went to some abandoned building and heard people talking about this, it's a little different when you hear people like saying it on TV that like supposedly are in charge of stuff. It's like, whoa, okay.
Also, it's interesting the idea of like, it's like, hey, you know how electricity works, right? It's like, yeah, okay, now think about that. But what if electricity was conscious thought and we didn't know how to like build how to build it to conduct it or control it, but it exists out there. Also, our author says like, hope you stay longer this time, and then James like whispers back to him, was like, I've never been here before, kind of saying like, you're a con man. But as he walks away, he's like, there must be something about you then. Then we have James goes looking around the building. He finds some like recruits with shaved heads staring into a black poster.
Yeah.
But like something exists in the poster. It's like you kind of like see like streaks of like dark purple and the pure blackness like moving or whatever.
Yeah, it's not like a black square. Yeah, there is something going on there.
Which they're suggesting like that's what James sees rather than like, because they'll cut to it and it's just a black square sometimes. This also happened. There's a black square poster in one of the kids' rooms that did the same thing, but like only for like a moment.
Yeah.
And oh yeah, so also there's the Stephen Root character also talked about like the if you stare into the abyss stares back, and talking about how like now that's a bumper sticker and has no meaning, but he's like, no, if you really think about it, and he basically just finds a new way to say the same exact thing. It's like, not because it's new, it means something. Which also, it's like tantalizing, but also it's like, oh, it's also bullshit.
Yeah. And they're really on the nose about this and this. Like, they don't try to establish like, oh, it's a mystery and this is deep. It's like, oh, you think this is as much bullshit as the main character.
Yeah.
It's like, this is not this is not like oh, I'm trying to think of a movie where it's like, oh no, it's all real. Damn it, I can't remember. But yeah, it's like Blair Witch or something. It's like, no, that was actually real. And it was like, oh, okay, I thought it was going to be like something different. Whereas this movie is like, it's more like another movie I like, Jacob's Ladder. Remember that one?
I've actually never seen Jacob's Ladder.
Oh, it's a cool movie. You ever seen Angel Heart?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. These are all in the same family of like, yeah, you don't want to believe this, and you're not really being shown things that make you. It's like, oh, I'm seeing some things unreliably. It's like, this has got to be bullshit.
Or have you ever seen Frailty?
Yes.
So, but actually, that one has a twist where it shows you like all these things that are unbelievable, and you're like, that can't be real. But the twist is like, nope, it's all real.
Yeah. Or it's like the what was that one with John Goodman, the 10 Cloverfield Lane.
Yeah.
It's like you don't know, like, oh, is the stuff he's saying going on outside real, or am I, is this guy just built this whole world of nonsense? And I can't reference it. I guess I'm gonna have to start believing him or not.
Yeah.
And then you find out, oh no, he has also built this whole world of nonsense, but yet this is also real. But it's just like, yeah. So it's I love stories like that. Like, it's like, oh no, it's not. It is real, but you don't want to believe it the whole way because it never really shows its face. There's always like a doubt.
Essentially, the movie is always on James' side in him doubting everything that's going on.
Yeah.
And then his perspectives change, and then you have to change with him. So the movie does that pretty well.
Yeah.
Even though the change is like nothing makes sense, but by that time it's like the movie's almost over. It's like, okay, all right,
cool. This looks cool, like filmmaking wise. Like, yeah, this is fun to watch. I don't know why it's happening, but okay.
But we'll get there. And then he like moves on to like a dirty basement, and he finds like a group chanting around a chalkboard. They're whispering for something to show itself. And then you kind of hear some clanking, and then you see like some staff come by and escort James out of the building for like interrupting their, group work or whatever.
Well, at first the group, he's like standing on a raised platform.
Yeah, in darkness.
Dais above, and they're like, "We hear you. Come out." And he like thinks, "Oh, it's me." They hear, and it turns out, just remember this scene for later. But yeah, so it was kind of a cool scene, like the way it looped back together. It was like, oh, that's sort of cool.
Okay. Also, the group's doing stuff in weird unison again, like looking in the same direction at the same time. They all blow on a bottle at the same time.
Yeah. Yeah, the group think in this is frightening. This is communism. Don't you see it?
It's always that great thing where it's like in a society, I don't know. This is like in sci-fi stuff where there's like a society for robots, and then like some humans trying to pass off as a robot, and then suddenly they realize there's a human amongst themselves, and all the heads turn towards the human. It's like, or stuff like that where everybody turns their head, and you see that thing where it's like all the heads are one way, and the one head you can see is like the main character. It's like, oh, they're fucked.
Oh yeah, it's like the woman who's like hideously ugly.
Yeah.
And they keep trying to do surgery to change her face, and it's like, oh, we're going to send you to a colony where everyone, but they don't show the faces of either group until the end.
Yeah.
And it's like the people that are hideously ugly are that's the most 90% of the people, and then there's the 10% that look like humans. Because they have like pig faces or just distorted faces. It's kind of a cool Twilight Zone episode.
James talks to Garrett. He's like one of the kids at the place, and he earlier he asked him if he knew who Amanda was, but he said he didn't. Here he admits to knowing Amanda. He kind of sounds like he's also investigating Pontifex, but that's not really clear. And he says that they moved her to somewhere for like testing or like the next phase or whatever.
Yeah. He knows where it is.
Yeah. So James heads out to a forest where Pontifex has like something secret going on there.
There's also, day camp.
Yeah. It's called Camp Elsewhere. It looks abandoned, and I forget, we saw this before. There was like a picture. It might have been like there was like a warehouse of documents, and I think we might have saw something in there where it has like a news clipping of like experiment goes wrong for religious thing, and there's like, it shows this cabin. I think it's like this cabin that they're talking about here.
Okay.
So yeah, that's the place where one of their experiments went wrong. James goes into a building. He finds a filing cabinet. It has like Amanda in it and like all the dead kids, and it's just like full of like all their information. Like there's like social security cards, everything. They just photocopied like everything they had. which is stuff that real cults do, where they just take all your identity information and then just do what they want with it to get a bunch of money, and to control you.
Yeah.
And then he finds his own file, but there's nothing in it. So he's like, that's weird.
Yeah, it just has his name on it, and you open it, there's nothing there.
And then James goes into another cabin, and here's there's a pile of empty bottles at the door. So, it's dusty and dilapidated, but apparently there's still power because there's a VHS in there, and he pops it in. One of them was labeled Manifestation. And then on the tape, there's like kids performing like some sort of ritual. Then there's like a person who's like confusing and acting weird and has like glowing eyes because of like the night vision camera thing they got going on.
Yeah.
Then they start doing stuff with their own blood where they're like, they have like a wound in their side and they're like drawing blood out of it or something. And then there's like a drawing on the wall with the blood, which I think might mirror the end of the movie. That blood pattern, but I'm not sure. I didn't rewind and check it out. And then the weird person like stares into the camera, and then James like uneased by this, and he like looks behind him, like because like they're like looking past him in the video.
And the teddy bear is gone.
Oh, it is? Okay.
Yeah, because the teddy bear, which always like was shown over his shoulder while they were getting the reaction shots of him watching this strange video.
Yeah.
Like when he finally looks around, like it's not there.
Oh, okay.
That's it, which is cool. It's as cool as hell. It's like, oh, the teddy bear is gone, but it doesn't like attack him or something.
Yeah,
it's just, okay, that's weird.
Here's this thing you notice, and now it's missing. James heads outside and he hears voices and goes to them, and there's like a bunch of people are running around a large fire, and then the fire like reaches into the sky, and James like starts hallucinating a bit. And then he gets weirded out because there's a lot of people running around this fire, and then he's like staring like the voices of the people chanting or whatever, and then when he turns away, all the voices stop at once, and then he turns back and the fire is gone, the spotlight is off, turns off, and then the people like are marching away from it, and then like James takes like a step backwards, and they all stop and then like start moving towards him with every step he takes backwards while like looking at them. And then he's
simultaneously.
Like, yeah.
So it sounds like 1,000 people doing a footstep at
once. He's like, oh, fuck this shit. And then he runs away. The people give chase. He gets in his car and he leaves. And then he's like, when he escapes them, he's like, what the fuck was that? Which is the appropriate reaction.
Yeah,
This is how real people react to this. James goes to police and he brings him like the files he found, but Villers is angry because like, you just screwed up the investigation by stealing these files. And he's like, well, nothing was locked and everything looked abandoned. So, and then James goes to his shop and he like grabs a gun, a knife, and some other stuff. He goes to Nora and explains like Pontifex to her, and there's like a phone call when they have the weird clicking over it. And then he takes Nora to a hotel because he thinks her life's in danger. And then he reassures that Nora that Amanda isn't dead, and this is where they like kind of confirm that like, oh, they had an affair. And then James has his nightmares again, showing where like his wife and kid like died in a car accident while he was having an affair.
Yeah, it seemed a little like this is like, oh, this is a bridge too far. How convenient.
Which I also think he's having the affair directly after like her husband's funeral.
Yeah, it was like she's in funeral clothes, bent over a table. Or something. Oh, that's dark. It's one way to deal with grief, I guess.
In Wedding Crashers, the Will Ferrell character said you get way more pussy at funeral than you do at weddings.
That's true. Everyone's feeling vulnerable and emotional. That's when you really want to do the deed, when people are like just racked with the worst pain they've ever
Yeah.
felt.
Well, if you want to absolutely make sure you never want to see that person again, that's definitely the way to do it.
Yeah, a lot of shame sex. That's why there's so many problems in this country. Is I think people actually think like that sometimes. This is why I don't go to funerals. I don't get like laid randomly in a dark way. It's like, no, this is wrong. No, I don't go to funerals because they're sad.
James wakes up and he sees the empty man. Well, it looks kind of like a bag of trash in the hallway, and then it unforms into a person. But like before it can touch him, it just disappears. Because remember, you only in the second day you only see him.
Yeah, this is day 2, by the way. All this weird stuff has happened.
The doorbell rings, and then the teddy bear from the cabin is left on the porch. James goes to take his pills because he's also been taking pills like periodically through this section.
And my wife identified them by name as an anti-anxiety medicine.
Okay.
It was like, oh yeah, that's a generic for this. It's like, okay, cool. So they actually got that part right.
So he doesn't take the pill, and he puts on his wedding ring. Then closes it. And so I have this being Act 3. We've got titles. Day 3. We know that's the last day.
This is when the magic happens. It's when you stab yourself to death with scissors in the face. Whatever.
James is outside the Pontifex Institute, watching Garrett and like some kids get in a car. He's also drinking, and the teddy bear is in the car.
Yeah, I like the teddy bear's in the passenger seat, and he's just like drinking whiskey. It's like out of a bottle. Like,
no, see, Nathan, this is a reference to diet. No, it's not. I was just thinking of Argyle from Die Hard with the bear in the back seat while he's hanging out in the parking garage.
This is a guy who's unaware of what's going on. That's the deeper meaning.
Yeah.
He is unaware of the greater drama that's going on in Nakatomi Plaza, 50 stories above him, or however tall it is. It's like, that's really what that means.
James follows the car, and they pick up a lot of people for how big that car is.
Yeah, it's like, you get 20 people, and then what are you doing? Going to have a fire drill, or you get out and run around the car at the stop sign?
But when they do get everybody out, they do at least like there's so many people that one of them is in a trunk, so they account for that. The car stops at a hospital, but it goes into a gated area. But James sneaks his way in to follow the group. There's people bowing to an unconscious body. It's
really weird.
Yeah,
because you don't expect it. Like, all of a sudden it happens. It's like, what is that? Because there's people walking around the hospital, and these guys are doing it.
And it is Paul from the beginning of the movie, the last survivor of the first part of this movie.
Yes.
Then they go away from the hospital, and James kidnaps Garrett, like pepper sprays him and cuffs him in the back of his car, and nobody cares because they're all on their cell phones. So I don't know. It's like so the real society is blind to what's going on because they have cell phones and technology, and everybody else is awake to the God that will destroy us all.
I was like the guy that complains about everyone on their phones. It's like, yeah, as opposed to what, staring off into space? Because I'm not going to talk to you either way. So don't complain. I actually had that conversation for real in an Outback restaurant. Because the three of us were sitting there sending funny stuff to each other on our phones and laughing. And then we'd put them down and talk. And then this guy in the background was like, everyone's on their phone all the time. And I said, no one wants to talk to you. I said it over my shoulder like that. Guess what? I didn't hear anymore. They were complaining about me being on the cell phones. Of course, then the manager comes over. Like, how is everything? It's like, we haven't been served yet. So fine. She's like, okay, just checking out, because apparently someone heard it. It was like, uh-oh. The big guy, we need to get him some cheese fries stat. He's going to start the place up.
Yeah, it's always a weird thing where it's just, I think people are like offended by people instead of being like bored and staring off in the middle distance. Like you have shell shock syndrome. You're just like, I'll play a word game on my phone. It's like,
Yeah.
no, give them a broom.
Yeah, I mean, in public, like random people, like, it's so rude. It's like, okay, is this better? Because that's all you're going to get from it. I'm not going to like put this down and engage in some conversation. I only talk to the people I want to, and you're not one of them. So
Well,
don't be offended.
And there's always that juxtaposition where it's like New York now, and everyone's on a subway with their phone out, and it's like New York 1950. Everyone's on the subway with a newspaper, not looking at each other.
Yeah, because like if the murder's going on over the newspaper, no one can see your head move. So fine. At least with a cell phone, you'll look at the murder, maybe put it on the board.
Yeah.
It's like you are participating more with the cell phone because you're making a memory that everyone can share is when somebody gets stabbed to death on the subway.
So yeah, James takes Garrett like away and like he's like interrogating him. And then Garrett refers to Paul as like a transmitter. He says that he needs an empty man to bridge into the real world. He tells him like, you've got the itch in the brain, don't you?
That was a weird line. Yeah.
And then James punches Garrett in the face a bunch, but he just laughs and then he just leaves him there like handcuffed and pepper sprayed. James breaks back into the Pontifex building. However, all the chains are already broken into, so he doesn't actually break into it. He grabs a manifestation manual, and here he finds his file again, except now there's stuff inside of it. There's like an article entitled Growing Up in San Francisco, like not written by him.
Yeah.
Another one that says like hero cop, family dies in accident, and the picture isn't him. There's a prescription that he was taking written to someone else. It's not his prescription for him. There's the birthday thing in there, which we know he used that, but we don't know, is that his actual birthday or not? And there's also pictures of him just like sitting naked in a dark room.
Yeah.
So it's like, he doesn't remember that.
We all have pictures like that.
James drives around and then he's like flushed with thousands of thoughts. One point he's driving his car in the hospital, which is fun. Like, because they're doing like whatever, blue screen or whatever, so they can put whatever there. So they just took pictures of them like driving the camera through the hospital, and then they just put that as him. He's driving his car in the hospital. It's very like Naked Gun.
Yeah, I thought I was immediately thinking, you're gonna put the red light on his roof. And they're like driving through like go dancers, changing rooms, and all this stuff.
But this is like this is his inner thought, so it's fine. You can have weird stuff like that. And then James is back at the hospital and he's asking a nurse about Paul. She gets weird, so it's like, okay, she's probably in the cult as well.
She gets really weird. It's like, I don't know what they did because she seemed normal. And then when he asked her that question, it's like the room darkened behind her and her features got strange. And it was like, what?
Well, and it's also like, it's almost like she almost goes catatonic because like she doesn't move at all. It's like she talks, but her body doesn't move.
Yeah. It's another really cool thing they did for like no money. It's just like, just say your line's weird and don't move. Don't even move your eye. It's like you're not even like you're just doing this. Like, oh yeah, he's always been here.
Yeah, you just imagine the director just is holding a gun behind the camera. It's going like, "This is loaded. Do everything I tell you to."
Yeah,
and there's like an internal fear you pick up on her performance.
Yeah.
Then we see Amanda's in the room with Paul. She's like trimming his beard. She says something like, "He transmits, we receive, and the message is contagious," which is this is kind of alluding to like the idea of the comic book, because that's kind of like what's going on there. Because it's not necessarily like like in Pontypool, it's literally like the English language is the transmission for the virus.
Right.
But here it's not exactly like that. It's like an ethereal, like if you just there's like a thought train, and if you get on it, then a train might come and knock you over. So it's not really, it's hard. It's not necessarily like it's transmitting from person to person. It's just like if you just start thinking wrong, the bad things will happen, which is probably like a weird, like it's probably like a suicide kind of like comparison or analogy or whatever.
Well, yeah, I mean, this was actually a thing. Like, it got mainstreamed. I think was it called The Gift or whatever. What was that thing where it's like you
the power of
you
positive
lean-
thinking. Yeah.
Yeah, it was that kind of stuff. It's like this is sort of the same thing, but what if it was all in service of evil?
Yeah.
Which it really is actually. Greed. But yeah, this like takes it like way beyond.
Well, I think they say something like everybody's like part of this whole conscious thought, but there's something so old that they're greedy, and like they just want to eat that thought or whatever, and then it's like starting to come to reality, and that's the whole.
That's kind of Lovecraftian, like
yeah,
it's like eldritch beings are coming from beyond the void to eat your thoughts, and they feed on, and we're gonna like align with them.
Yeah.
I always like these people that like we're gonna summon the dragon and it will help us, and it always kills everyone. Like, what do you think? It's a dragon. What do you think it was gonna do? Be your friend? It's never your friend.
Here we have James calls Nora, but Nora doesn't know who he is. Amanda's saying that she needs a candidate. Apparently James is a candidate, and apparently they created him, or they created his identity. Yeah, she's saying James was thought into existence. A tulpa, their empty man.
Well, they needed an empty man that was more durable.
Yeah,
because apparently just a actual human, like the guy who transmitting from earlier in the mountains, like he's dying because the dark energy is killing him.
Yeah.
So they made a more purified gold transistor that could transmit the evil quickly and be more durable.
So much like writing a screenplay, the better the character, the deeper the backstory. So
yeah,
because they had to get made a character with backstory, and they have to make a character with extreme guilt, because that made everything more grounded and real, and thus it would take better.
And also they needed the darkness to be in him, so he would be primed to channel the darkness. Yeah. So his life was nothing but this construct life that didn't exist, was nothing but loss, death, and cheating on your wife with this wife of another man who just died, like isn't even cold in the ground. It's like, yeah, let's start going at it. It's like that's a lot of dark stuff going on in one place in one time.
And so this is like kind of the hard turn, like kind of like the sense wise, because they're like, wait, you just telling me everything we did up until this point was that just a fabrication, or did it happen? And like that, you're not really supposed to know, but like it doesn't make sense. Like, why wouldn't Nora know him if we just saw that scene? It's like, okay, when was the switch when it stopped being like their screenplay into like the reality? So that's kind of a little hard to buy, but it's a horror movie, so these things happen all the time, so this is a better version of that, so I'll allow it. So we cut to James with his folder. He walks through like the shadow. He's like walking through the shadows, and he's like approaching the group by the chalkboard that we saw before. It's a flashback, but this time he's on the floor, and then James sees himself on the balcony. Then he like freaks out and drops the paper and like clings against something. You realize like, oh, they were there at the same time, or at least that's how it works in his mind. We don't know if that's real or not. And then we see James in the chamber with that chair. Then we see the weird skeleton in that chasm again, and it's kind of blended together where like the skeleton walks through the wall and then like gains a cloak as it walks through the wall.
Yeah.
And it's chasing after James.
Skeletons, PG-13.
It chases after James, and then James tries to face it, but his gun won't work, and then the thing like vomits itself inside of James. And then James gets up and runs away. He hasn't changed. She's like, that's still weird. I don't know what just happened, but I'm still me. But he goes home, and he has flashbacks of memories that apparently didn't happen, but you know that's their screenplay. The home is empty, so it's like, oh, none of this ever happened, but like it did, but whatever. And then we see his wife and kid are like flying off the bridge to their death, which I don't know if that's like has extra significance, because another again, it's like it's a bridge, but also this never happened, or it happened to somebody else.
Yeah, I mean, this stuff really happened, but just not to the person they willed into existence.
Yeah. And then James ends up in front of Paul in the hospital, and he just blows his brains out, just empties the clip into this guy's head.
Yeah, we just see Paul sprayed all over the wall, like, or at least his head.
Yeah,
It's
which
like,
I think if you like, maybe if you go back to like when he's in the cabin and he sees the drawing on the blood on the wall, I think it might mirror up with the Paul's blood on the wall there. So I don't know if it has deeper meaning; it just matches.
No, that guy that in the manifestation video was the earliest or an earlier channel.
Yeah.
So he died just some similar way.
And then Jane ends up in front of the and but they cut to the outside of the room, and nobody at the hospital seems to care. In fact, they bow to him, so it's all cool.
All at once, simultaneously.
Yeah. And so that's the end of the movie.
Yeah, that's the satisfying conclusion to the movie.
I mean, it's a horror movie, so you're supposed to end on something bleak and then like promise a sequel, I guess. So
I mean, I like this movie was like a surprise, like, oh, I like this because it reminds me of all the other movies we talked about during this. It's like
you compare it to The Ring. You said you like this kind of being a version of The Ring.
Yeah, see, the thing about The Ring was like, not that The Ring was perfect, but visually it was really cool.
Yeah,
it's like there was a lot of cool, great stuff in The Ring that just drew you into it. I don't know if you've ever seen I think it's the original version. Is it Japanese or Korean? I can't
It's Japanese. Ringu.
Yeah, I watched that, and that was more just like kind of just a direct horror movie with the same elements.
Yeah.
But the thing about The Ring was like it had a good cast. It took its time, and there was a lot of weird stuff going on, and it was just sort of cool. Again, the story
and putting like a countdown over someone's head is always great. It's builds tension because, like, well, their time's almost up. What's going to happen?
Yeah. And The Ring, I also learned why everyone in the Pacific Northwest is nuts, because all it does is rain constantly. It's just like the bleakest place in the world to live. I mean, I don't know if that's true, but the movie definitely gave that impression. It's like, oh, this is a bleak, strange place.
I'd also kind of compare this to, you ever seen It Follows?
Yes.
That's a great movie.
Oh, yeah, that's a good one. That's actually satisfying at the end. It's like,
yeah. But that does a lot of great stuff where it just has like only one person sees the weird thing and everybody else doesn't see it at all. So there's like these weird scenes where it's like a giant man will walk through a door trying to kill the person and nobody sees it except for her, and it's very frightening to watch it, especially as nobody else in the scene reacts to it except for her.
Yeah. Everyone else is sitting there eating dinner like, what are you freaking out about? It's like a monster, yeah.
Which I did see a trailer for a new horror movie. It looks like it's kind of like using similar things called Smile. Which,
that looked good. We'll have to see.
The trailer looks good. I doubt it will be good, but like like that's a good premise. Because like it's frightening and nothing is happening except people are smiling creepily.
Yeah, this also kind of reminds me of like the really good X-Files episodes.
Yeah.
Where there's like this extended opening of really weird stuff happening. And it's like, well, how are Fox and Scully going to put this together? And they really don't, but just a lot of extenuating strangeness happens throughout the episode. And at the end, everyone's like, okay. It's like there's a lot of stuff like that.
Well, and stuff like we enter on like, here's like an occult thing. And then like, because like Fox is like open-minded, he'd go in there as like, and then like Scully would be like, is any of this true? Like, it doesn't feel like it's true. It seems like it's a bunch of bullshit. And he's like, I don't know, give it some time. And then it's like, yeah, the cult is bullshit, but then there's something that sparks it. It has some reality and otherworldliness that is true.
Yeah, it's like once you dig through all the bullshit, there's danger there. But
yeah.
But the it has to be wrapped in bullshit, the danger, because that's how you make money off of it. If you just gave everyone the answer, it's like, well, I'm not getting my tax exempt status out of this. So
and I read a preview for the comic, and the comic seems to like follow investigators that are working for the FBI, like investigating the virus, and the virus doesn't really have like, it's not something you can like do a blood sample. It's like, oh, you have it. It's like this weird thought virus.
yeah, very Pontypool-esque.
Yeah,
like,
yeah. And it's just like a pandemic of extreme violence and suicide. So kind of like The Happening, except less ridiculous.
The Happening, some of the best scenes in the worst movie I've ever seen. It's like there's some really cool stuff in this movie, but I really hate the story and don't buy the characters. And it's like, okay.
Mark Wahlberg as a science teacher.
It's not even the performances; it's just the story was ridiculous.
Yeah.
And it didn't establish itself as like, well, if they do A, B, and C, they'll be fine, or they have to figure out A, B, and C. No, it's just people randomly like killing each other and killing themselves, and which is like the scenes are great.
Yeah.
But the story just doesn't hold together. But
yeah,
not like this
because it starts out strong. Because I think it's just like somebody pulls out a gun and shoots himself in the head. And it's like, oh, what the hell is that about? And then somebody else comes up, picks up the gun, shoots himself, and it's just a line of people doing it. It's like, holy shit.
And the best scene, though, it was probably, I don't know how Happening was after 9/11, but it was kind of haunting with the construction guys in the opening shot where they're just like, hey, what's going on up there? You know, because they're like riding in one of those construction elevators.
Yeah.
So one guy rides them up, and then just someone falls, and they're like, oh, shit, everyone freezes. Like, that guy just fell from like 20 stories or whatever. And then they look up, and it's like everyone's just walking off the roof, and bodies are hitting the floor. It's like, this is going to be a great movie. Nope. But damn, those scenes were cool. Just as how stunning and emotionally,
that guy,
visceral they were.
The guy sets up like the automatic lawnmower and like just crawls underneath it.
Yeah, I always wondered how that worked because I know how those lawnmowers work because I have one. It's like, oh, if you get off the seat, it shuts off. I mean, you'd have to like twist wires together and bypass things. Like you could make it do that, but it's like, yeah, I just put a gun to my mouth to kill myself. I wouldn't let a lawnmower run slowly over me. But, they're not in their right mind. So because of why of the trees. Oh, in the end, it's global warming. It's like, oh yes, let's go back to the Iron Age. That's the only way the trees will let us live. Did not like the messaging in that movie, but this movie, however.
Well, they always say like we got to help save Mother Earth. Remember, the Earth will live on. It doesn't have to support our life.
Yeah, we're not unlike like Kirk said, the carbon units are not necessary for the survival of V'ger. They're just a feature of the planet. So. Or some profound nonsense like that. I'm trying to like get in the spirit of the movie by just saying nothing, making it seem nothing is everything. There is no meaning in anything. It's like, great, cool. So how much money you want? So what are we doing here?
But this does seem to be like a pretty significant adaptation from because like, well, I heard Patton also talking earlier about like how a lot of people like it's just hard to sell screenplays in Hollywood if you just don't have a name. So you got people now that are basically going out and like commissioning comic books to essentially like have their screenplay put into like a like kind of like a storyboard form, and then they own it, and it's easier to sell it to Hollywood.
So they're not truly into the art of comics. They're just like publishing a storyboard.
Yeah.
So the simple-minded cretins that run studios would be like, yes, me think people like this mini explosions. Boom.
And so like, yeah, sometimes it's really easy to adapt comic books because it's like, oh, they've already done like the shot setups and composition. Like we can steal half of that and we're good. But it seems like almost nothing from this comic was carried over into this movie. So there was a ground up, and it's still visually stunning and interesting for what couldn't have been a huge budget of movie. So
yeah, I love this movie. I'm again not a big fan of the end, but it did have to end there for a reason. Because otherwise, it's like, well, why is this guy special? Why is this the only guy out of 300 million people that's figured this out. I was like, no, you have to have that ending. I get it. I just wasn't my favorite, but um, but you don't know. Like he might not be strapped into that bed. You know, he might be able to like walk around and act normally, but just channel this darkness also. So he might be like a mobile darkness tulpa. Who knows?
Yeah, or he's holding the dark. Yeah, maybe he has some agency over this darkness that we don't know about.
Yeah, because
maybe there's hope for him.
Channel, maybe he has a shutoff valve that they didn't. Or not.
Yeah, I mean, usually in horror movies, that would be like the sequel when it almost never involved anything but from the first cast. It's just like a different story told in the same universe with the same rules or whatever. So.
The emptier man. The void beyond the void.
The third movie, who is the emptiest man? Fourth movie, Beyond the Empty Man. Fifth movie, Under the Valley of the Empty Man.
Dawn of the Empty Man, a prequel. Just a bunch of monks running around the Middle Ages. How they get that skeleton in the caves, how they kill the actual empty man. Because he used all his power to manifest in our universe and they killed him. So now he's just this force. But yeah, we could just make this crap up forever, you know?
Yeah. But yeah, there is multiple, there's like 3 volumes of the comic book, but again, they're very different. So you can see it because it's more like a worldwide investigation. Where here it's just kind of like a smaller story of the occult turning into madness and becoming reality.
Yeah. But, you know, I mean, how does it relate to our times? This movie retelling of it is, you know, there seems to be a lot of people that like alternate simulated reality. What was that one lady say, the spokesperson for Trump, like alternate facts.
Yeah.
Alternate facts. It's just like, this all sounds weird, but you realize, oh yeah, there was a whole cult running around this country that like tried to storm Congress to do something, and it was all based on stuff as equally as silly as what's presented in this movie.
Yeah, this would be valid in Q.
Yeah, oh yeah. The empty Trump. Okay, we're getting into politics. I don't need to do that. But yeah, but we can see reflections of this in our actual reality of like, and this stuff would be abstract and brainy compared to what actually happened. Like, you know, it's the real world's a lot more dumb than the speculative world because most people are idiots, or most people are not maybe idiots, but they're just willing to believe bad things or dumb things because it's like, well, this is easier than thinking. So yeah, whatever you say, it's the underground caves of pedophiles or secretly running Hollywood. Yeah. Wow. I don't even have to think. I can be on an adventure. You know, my life as the assistant manager of Burger King doesn't seem so meaningless when I can slay the pedophile demons. You know? Yeah. That's how cults work. That's how they get you.
Get you at your lowest. Tell you you're special.
I mean, L. Ron Hubbard on book, I've read it as saying, you know, the best Ponzi scheme is starting organized religion. Like tax exempt, people give you money, you don't really have to produce a whole lot. And, you know, it's like some people deny that he said that. I was like, no, that sounds in line with like he had all kinds of weird philosophical musings, especially when he was on his statute of limitations tour on his boat. You know, that was a lot of great ideas came out of that.
But yeah, this is on HBO Max. It's streaming there, so you can watch it. It's if you've never heard of it, it's a pretty decent horror movie. Again, it's a horror movie, so go with low expectations and then just enjoy the ride. So.
No, it's not blood and guts or anything. It's not that kind of horror. But you know, if you like
not constantly, not till the end when he blows his head off. Yeah, that's pretty.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, there's a payoff at the end. If you need the money shot, it's there. But yeah, if you like things like Jacob's Ladder, you know, the good X-File episodes. What was it? What was the De Niro one?
Angel Heart.
Angel Heart. Yeah. If you like stuff like that, or The Ring, you're gonna like this. It's kind of the same pace, motivation, characters doing similar things. These movies come around about every 10 years. There's a good one. Or like you said, It Follows, another movie sort of in this genre.
I would say this is a bit long, but not too long. It's just kind of a bit long for a horror movie,
Yeah.
but that's also because like the first section is like 20 minutes long, and then is essential to setting up the rest of the movie, but can be like essentially forgotten about because only one character exists beyond it.
But it's great, like cinematography and storytelling. Though it's, I mean, it's,
yeah.
I hope this guy does other things because
Yeah.
I enjoyed this.
Yeah.
I don't know if he's gonna, if I want him to direct the next Avengers movie or something, unless he's gonna make it something like this, which would be really cool.
The psychological Avengers movie.
Yeah.
The sword. There is an empty man in Thor: God, Love, and Thunder.
Oh, is there? Okay.
Yeah, it's called Eternity. You can only see it as a shadow figure with stars and nebula behind it.
Well, see, that's what they need to do.
And it's such a forceful being that you can't actually communicate with it, otherwise you would explode.
Oh, that's from the Bible. Humans can't look at God. That's why it's like it was always a burning bush or a cloud or something.
Oh, okay.
If you saw the face of God, you'd just die because you'd be overwhelmed.
I remember that dogma. You couldn't hear the voice of God, or your head would explode. So.
Yeah. I think that's it too. I think there's stuff like that in it. Like it's why God has to reveal himself in mysterious ways, because you can't just like, God, come here. You don't command God. Because if people could, then religion would have like a much more transactional nature. It's like, God, I need this. Okay.
What is it like?
Get me in Tuesday, God. That would be great.
There's like a weird thing about biblically accurate angels where they're just basically like floating orbs of eyes and feathers.
Yeah, they're weird. They're not. They weren't humans. And they also exist outside of time. That's like the biggest difference, I guess, between us and angels, besides the physical manifestation, is like they live in the past, the present, and the future simultaneously, where we just live in a line.
Yeah.
It's like, that's why they're so abstract and strange, because it's like, they were the first creation of God, and he made them the most like him, where they like live forever, and they aren't constrained temporally or by physical bodies that like ours that grow old and die. And that's why like the angels like hate us. It's like, well, all they do is sin and they're bad. And it's like, well, yeah, I gave them limitations that they have to overcome, and you have to help me make them better. And then Lucifer was like, no, kill them, overthrow God. And then you get Satan. And like, yeah, there's always one, isn't there? There's always one.
Which that was always like kind of the plot point of Christianity. I didn't understand. It's like, if Satan hates God, and it's essential that Satan punishes people in hell, why would Satan punish anybody?
Well, Satan doesn't hate God. He hates man.
Oh, okay.
And his job is not to punish people in hell. If you've read Dante's Inferno, his job is to be punished in hell. He is in the darkest corner of hell because he knew who God was, and he also knows, like all angels, fallen angels, whatever, he also knows like the history and the story. And it's like, oh, and he still chose to defy God and try to dethrone him. Like, it's like, it's really weird.
Yeah.
Which is why I don't understand people who, I understand very much the troll Satanists. Like, yeah, we're with the Church of Satan and we're just here to, we're actually atheists, but we just want to do anti-everything to annoy you. But the true Satanists that think they can like conjure the power of Satan and use, it's like, he hates you. And read the book, he loses. What are you lining up with him for? It's like he's already lost. It's preordained.
Also, this is like a weird thing, a theory I have about horror movies that is especially weird, but I also know like why they don't do it. But so in horror movies, essentially evil is real.
Yeah.
And exists and will kill you and can do magical things.
Yes.
Good is not. Good does not exist in horror movies and cannot manifest itself to help you. Only evil can touch you.
Well, there's a reason for that, though. There's a philosophical reason for that. I don't know how well I'm going to describe it, but evil is a manifestation of lust, greed, hate, anger, all the bad religions. Good is a manifestation of faith and the belief that things will turn out sunny side up. But if you lack that faith, evil will kill you. I mean, it's literally like that's the truth. Because they're always like, why doesn't God, if you talk to like people with like theology degrees and professional guy, which are kind of interesting. I've read a lot about religious stuff in my life. It's always found it fascinating. It's like, why doesn't God cure this little girl's cancer? It's like, well, because if God did that, then Satan could do something equally and opposite as bad. It's like, because these are like teeter-tottering powers. It's like, so if this manifests as a sudden cure for cancer, then like, oh, the president has a heart attack or something because now Satan can do something. It's always like this chessboard of good and evil. And it's like, yeah, that's why we can't get what we want, and why God's will is infinite and hard to understand, and all these other like philosophical reasons they come up with for like, yeah, we don't know. Yeah. But yeah, like, yeah, they've been trying to answer these questions for thousands of years.
But even if stuff like The Exorcist, where it's like, okay, here's this thing that's evil and has evil powers and can do things. Here's the good guys. They have faith, and all they're doing is just kind of throwing whatever at the board. They don't know if anything works or not. It's like they're not given any help or direction.
Yeah.
Which I guess is, humanity. Figure
yeah,
it out.
because if just an angel appeared and said, oh, do this, and all of a sudden the demon's gone. It's like, well, that's not scary.
Yeah. Yeah, if there is a fail-safe or a safety parachute, then the danger is eliminated or lessened. So,
because I don't know if you've actually seen videos of people that are possessed. It's like the stuff in The Exorcist is like really extreme and like on the nose. In real life, it's not at that scary, like people floating above the bed. That would be proof of something if you could actually video that.
Yeah.
But the way people act and the things they say and what they do, it is frightening. As a normal person in conventional reality, if you walked into that room and someone's screaming at you in Latin, a language that they did not understand before, now are screaming at the most vile blasphemy at you in Latin ever, which is like, I don't know what to make of that. Is that mental illness? Is it something else? But it is frightening just on its face. No green vomit, no weird life, people floating above the bed, just someone acting like that. And then you, as like this vessel of God, you come in and you just pray for hours, and then it eventually goes away. I mean, most of the time you only hear the success stories. But the real stories of this are like, yeah, it's gone. He never acted that way again until the day he died. He lived to be 80. And like when he had this brief moment in his life where he was screaming blasphemous stuff in Aramaic, which is like, how did that happen? It does make you wonder. But then, sometimes people just love to like attention.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Yeah, but that's what I have for the empty man.
Well, if you like
possessed by demons,
don't become the empty man.
Yeah,
even though also the empty man is the bad guy, and also the vessel, and also everything. If you liked what you heard, and how can you can find us at anchor.fm/Verhoeven Effect, or go to verhoeveneffect.com, or go to Angry Bob's Film for Normal Guys Review.com. You can rate our podcast and rate whatever you want, but the only thing the algorithm listens to is the highest ratings. Remember, you control the algorithm. The algorithm doesn't control you. I also have listener support there at verhoeveneffect.com, where you can support us at a monthly stipend, either 99 cents, $4.99, or $9.99. If we get more support, we'll just do more faster, because that always brings quality. You can find us at Twitter at Verhoeven Effect, Facebook at Verhoeven Effect. You can find us on YouTube at American Greed Factory. You can watch both that show and this show live and unedited. And we also have t-shirts at belowthecollar.com/Greed Factory. So for the Verhoeven Effect podcast, I'm Conlon.
And I'm Nathan.
Goodbye, America.